Right. I'm here. Hello, Kenny Russell. Kanum Kansua Moon. I say it's an understanding and the name derived from the ancestors, our ancestral understanding of ancient Egyptian, African ancient Egyptians. So what I'm gonna do today is um, give you a brief understanding about the Bible and its historical creation. So the Bible, a lot of people have the Bible. It's this mythological book. It's like folklore, which it is. It's like the story and the legend of John Henry, a man named Achilles from Troy. You can't kill him. You couldn't do anything, but unless you hit him in the Achilles, that's where his name derived from. So a lot of these stories, Zeus, Hercules, all these lifelike stories derive from people's imagination. And the Bible stems along the same story and guidelines and perspective and understanding. Now, the Bible to some is this ancient book that been around since the beginning of time. Some people even think that it just fell from the sky. The Bible just fell from the sky because God wrote it. Every word. King James Bible, they say every T, every dot, every I is the word of God. And they willing to die and they willing to live like that, you know? So uh what I'm gonna do is show you the historical creation, the origin of it, show you how it was made, what time period it came out of. There was no religion in the BC datings. The earliest religion is Christianity. Second one is Mohammedanism / Islam. The very last one is Judaism. But they tell you that Judaism is the first one. That's historically incorrect. So what I'm gonna do today, I'm gonna show you the Bible, how it came about, how it was written, the type of manuscripts they used to put it together, what time period it came out of. And I'm going to try to show you that when they said it was coming around from the BC dating and all that, that's historically incorrect. So the first Bible was printed in 1475 after Johannes Gutenberg made a printing press up in 1437 for the first time for the Europeans. See, they already had one in the 12th and 13th century. Japan, Japanese, and Chinese had one. But the first time ever in European history was 1437 with a gentleman by the name of Johannes Gutenberg. He lost it to Johann Fuss, which was a lender. He lent him some money he couldn't afford to pay him back. But Johannes Fuss knew he wasn't going to be able to pay him back. He gave him a loan on a high interest rate. So took him to court, and they found a way to get the money back. And he was like, I can start printing these Bibles. But the thing about it was the mass populace of the European couldn't read at that time. The European couldn't read. Very few handpicked, few of them could. Rich people that send their kids to like tutors and things of that nature, they could read. But the mass populace of the European couldn't read until the Renaissance period. And that comes along in like the 14th and 15th century. But I'm going to show you all that. So I'm going to share some slides today. I want to take my hat off to a lot of the ancestors. Like I say, an elder, he's still living. I want to pay homage to him because he's, to me, he's a person that I hope to be exactly like. He's a walking historian, if you will. You say the time period and say this was going on in that time period. As far as religion, and he know things that's unreligious. That just is Walter Williams. Take my hat off to him. Dr. John Henry Clark. Take my hat off to the ancestor. Dr. Yosef Ben Yakinen. Take my hat off to the ancestor. El Hajj Malik Shabazz, Malcolm Little, Malcolm X, all the same person. Take my hat off to him, and many others. But these are the guys that are very influential to me, and I'm going to share my screen at this time so we can get into this lecture, and show you exactly what I'm talking about the Bible and its creation. So I'm going to share my screen at this time. And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I didn't say that in the beginning, and I apologize. So I don't know where you at, so thank you for tuning in. Good morning, good afternoon. Like I said, let's let's get into the hard facts. And I have a lot of slides, so I'm gonna give you the brief information. I'm gonna run through them and things of that nature. So let's get going. I got a lot of literature to be reading, so I'm gonna try to keep it brief. Now, the Holy Bible and its historical creation. This is what we're gonna be doing today. This is a quote, of course, from Dr. Walter Williams. Excuse me. But I like to deal in facts, which are stronger than argument, more profound than reasoning, more dependable than opinion, silences dispute, supersedes predictions, and facts always end the argument. If you know the facts. Like I say, by now you should know. You should be able to say it with me, unless you're talking to a fool. Fool is not going to let you give him no fact while he's standing there with his belief. Now, what I also like to do is reiterate things from last week. Now, this is King David. I guess this is him here. I thought this was him because he had like a little crown on and this. But I'm believing this is King David because he was a warrior. He was the second king of Jerusalem after King Saul, the first one. And why I wanted to reiterate this is because this is how these people live, the Hebrews and all this stuff. And they go on in the Bible and history and saying that they created all these edifices, all these monumental historical monuments down in Egypt. Our ancestor created these things, the African ancestral line and the lineage. We created these things. So for people to try to give it off to the Hebrew, the black Hebrew Israelite, they don't have any idea, don't have the slightest idea of what they're talking about, and they're wrong. It's all false. This dude is sleeping on a rock or a pillow outdoors. This person is able to creep up on him. This is King David. He was like a warrior king. Like I say, he was a young guy that's known for slaying Goliath. He did that when he was 15, 16 years old, if I'm not mistaken. The big Philistine was killing everybody. He was 7 to 8 foot tall, 9 foot tall. All lies, but they put things together like this because your imagination is mind-boggling. Say, oh, he beat a giant, a little kid, and he took a rock and he whipped it over in a slingshot and knocked him across his head because God was with him. Okay. Anyway, my point for using this slide and reiterating that is that the Bible is for your imagination. It's something you have to believe in. There's no fact about it. That's number one. Nothing in the Bible is factual. It's historically worthless. It's historically incorrect. No names, none of the place, no time period. None of the stories is derivative of historical actuality in human life. So these people slept outside. They were nomads everywhere they went. In the first lecture, I speak about Jacob when he wrestled with God. It was him, 4 wives and 2 servant wives, something like that. And he had 11 sons with him. And he crossed over the Jabbok River. And his sons passed him everything they had, all of his belongings. This is how they lived. I'm not writing it. They lived with everything in tents and walked around just like that. Simple as that. Now here, this is another mind-boggling depiction of falsehood. This is supposed to be King David. This is the Queen of Sheba of Ethiopia. Like I told you, she's all got veils and diamonds all laced in all this silk. He got an old funky robe on like an Arab. You see? And he never had no temple. Again, the first temple, the second temple, none of that stuff has ever been found. But they go on to say Nebuchadnezzar tore it all up. We've never seen no temples. If you look at any of the Bible depictions in the movie, Saul used to live in like a little, I believe they had buildings and houses, but they used to live in like caves, big rock caves and stuff of that nature. So this is incorrect. Again, but it's a figment of your imagination. They put this in here to have these big lifelike stories, but they're false. So that's why I reiterated this. If you build the whole Egypt up, where is a place called Hebrew land? Where's a place called Jew land that these people built for themselves? They don't even have coffins for their kings. King David's body is not in the coffin. King Solomon was the third king. It was Saul, David, and Solomon. They don't have nothing for these people. So how can you build up this great land in Egypt as slaves, but you can't build your own stuff? So that's already rule number one. We're breaking down lies. So that's the first lie. But you have to have created some type of insanity to go on with this nonsense, unless you didn't know it. But I'm here for your superior awareness. Now, There's some more laughable stuff outside of the Bible. Inside, I'm sorry. This Matthew 27, King James Version. And behold, the veil of the temple was rent in twain from the top to the bottom, and the earth did quake, and the rocks rent. This is saying the temple was torn in half. The veil is like a curtain, but it's speaking about Jesus' body when he died. And the graves were opened, and many bodies of the saints which slept arose. This is saying dead people walked. The walking dead. This is what this is saying. And came out of the graves after the resurrection and went into the holy city and appeared unto many. Nobody never wrote of nothing like this. Walking dead. Now, when the centurion and they were with him watching Jesus, saw the earthquake and those things that were done, they feared greatly, saying, truly, this was the Son of God. I know, but he couldn't even destroy the people or kill the people that's trying to kill him. So he got a New Living Translation, same exact thing. Give me a second. Let me close my window. Apologize. Trying to let some air in. A little bit too much, though. This is the New Living Translation. I like to do this, put this one on top because it's a lot of Old English and it's very hard to read. The Bible was horribly written, but if you can navigate through this, you can do anything. You might be able to build an airplane. So this is the layman's term, New Living Translation. At the moment, the curtain in the sanctuary of the temple was torn. See, Jesus was called the temple. He was called church and all that type of stuff. So they're saying when he was torn, when he died. And two, from top to bottom, the earth shook, rocks split apart, and tombs opened. The bodies of many godly men and women who had died were raised from the dead. They left the cemetery after Jesus' resurrection, went into the holy city of Jerusalem, and disappeared to many. They went into the holy city of Jerusalem and appeared to many people. The Roman officer and other soldiers at the crucifixion were terrified by the earthquake and all that happened. They said this man was the Son of God. He was truly the Son of God. Okay. So here, at one point, they want you to believe that the rocks shook, split apart, and the tombs are open, and they walked immediately. As soon as he died, they walked immediately and showed everybody the walking dead. And then it said after the resurrection. We know he didn't resurrect till supposed to be 3 days later, but it's about a day and a half if you read the scriptures. Because he was crucified, I think, Friday evening, like Friday night. And he come up sometime around either Sunday night or Saturday night or Sunday morning. So he can't even make a real a prophetic premonition and make that be right. So I got this picture so you can see the depiction of it. They say Jesus was crucified between two thieves and things of that nature. So these are the two thieves, and this is him. They put irony on the top. This, I guess, in Greek or Aramaic, it meant like the king of the Jews, and they did that to mock him. None of this happened, but I'm showing you inside the Bible. And look at all this stuff going on. These are some weird looking people. Got horse heads on sticks and all that old stuff. Man, look here. None of this happened, but this is how they have to make it. You see the ground breaking, the depiction of earthquake, like, because they playing with your mind. So if you believe, again, the first word after B is lie. So when you believe, you have to be able to be lied to. And leave, V, is visually. That's just something I put together. So believe is being able to be lied to visually to me. But, you know, we can go on. You can look at this. I'm going to run through this. Now, the Bible was said to be made way BC and all that old stuff. But you see this man here? This is Johannes Gutenberg. He created the printing press. Wasn't for him, you wouldn't have the first Bible in 1475. So let's see who this man was and what happened, and see if what I'm talking about is true. There's no printed books before the printing press, so you need to get that right as well. Well, not in Europe, should I say. Okay. This is Johannes Gutenberg. These are all his names, things of that nature. So he was born and all this stuff. He was a blacksmith, goldsmith, inventor of the printing, inventor of the printer and a publisher. So he introduced the printing. He introduced printing to Europe with the printing press. His introduction of mechanical movable type printing to Europe started the printing revolution and is regarded as a milestone of the second millennium, ushering in the modern period of human history. It played a key role in the development of the Renaissance Reformation, the Age of Enlightenment, and the scientific revolution, and laid the material basis for the modern knowledge-based economy and the spread of learning to the masses. You see what I'm saying? I just told you, European was ignorant. And I'm not saying that that's their record. I'm not saying that to make fun of anybody. They were ignorant. They could not read. Everybody in Europe was ignorant. Like I say, they had hand-picked people that was rich and they sent their kids to tutors. But the masses right here, they cannot read until this Renaissance era, which they named it the Age of Enlightenment, which just really mean the age of learning. And this man is very important to them because when he printed up all that nonsense, which is the Bible, they created history at that same time. And anything they wanted to be historical, they put it in the Bible, which was a lie. Gutenberg in 1439 was the first European to use movable type. Among his many contributions to printing are the invention of a process for mass producing movable type, the use of oil-based ink for printing books, adjustable molds, mechanical movable type, and the use of a wooden printing press similar to the agricultural screw presses of the same period. His truly epochal invention was the combination of the elements into a practical system that allowed mass production of printed books was economically viable for printers and readers alike. Gutenberg's method for making type is traditionally considered to have included a type metal alloyed and hand mold for casting type. The alloys was a mixture of lead. This just tell you about what he did at low temperature for faster and more economical casting, cast well, and created a durable type. So this is the Renaissance era. So the Renaissance era took part in, I think, 2 or 3 stages, maybe 3 or 4, but we're going to deal with just the quick basis of the first couple of them. The first one was the age of arts and craft. That's when the European, he learned how to paint, and he learned how to do things like use mixed concrete for building and things like that. But they tell you that these Greeks and Europeans and Romans, they had already had all this. So if they had all this, why are they introducing it for the first time from the 13th to the 17th century? So you need to know what you're talking about. This is the Renaissance era. Excuse me. This is nothing that I printed up. You can read this. You can go type in Renaissance era and do your own search, but they know you're not going to do it. That's why I'm bringing it to you. They look at you as being lazy, and they look at us being a lazy people. So if we just put this together, ain't nobody going to call us out on it. But I do call you out on all that stuff. This is the Renaissance. It's a period in European history covering the span between the 14th to 17th centuries and making the transition from the Middle Ages to modernity. They were stuck in the Middle Ages, but they supposed to be the first progenitors of education with Socrates, Hippocrates, and Plato and Aristotle. All that stuff lied. Those are incarnated names. I'm gonna do a lecture on that. And they never existed in human form. They just write through them names to give them some basis of education and make them look like they were literate people. They were illiterate savages. And I'm not being disrespectful. I'm just giving you their record. The traditional views focuses more on the early modern aspects of the Renaissance and argues that it was a break from the past. But many historians today focus more on the medieval aspects and argue that it is an extension of the Middle Ages. The intellectual basis of the Renaissance. was its version of humanism. It wasn't even humanitarians or uh, people that was, you know what I mean, just regular people that had morality and respect and all that type of stuff inside them. They were savages, derived from the concept of the Roman humanities. This is a Roman person, and the rediscovery of classical Greek philosophy. See how they try to say rediscovery of classical Greek philosophy? They're talking about Aristotle and them. They never existed, such as that of, I guess this is Pythagoras, who said that who said that man is the measure of all things. This is new thinking became manifest in art. So this new thinking became manifest in art and uh, architecture and politics and science and all that type of stuff and literature. Early examples were the development of perspective and oil painting. Listen to this. Oil painting. They didn't. This is like when they learned how to do all this over, and the famous people was Leonardo da Vinci and all that type of stuff, and the knowledge of how to make concrete. Listen, to make concrete. Listen to me now. If they knew all this, building all these buildings in Rome and all that, why are they just learning how to make it here? Although the invention of metal movable type speed, the dissemination of ideas from the later 15th century, the changes of the Renaissance were not uniformly experienced across Europe. The very first traces appeared in Italy as early as the late 13th century, particularly with the writings of Dante and the paintings of Giotto. As a cultural movement, the Renaissance encompasses innovative flowering of the Latin and vernacular literatures, beginning with the 14th century Renaissance of learning based on classical sources, which contemporaries credit to Petrarch. These are Greek people and Roman people. The development of linear perspective and other techniques of rendering a more natural reality in painting. So this is still dealing with like arts and crafts, what he's saying. So this is just telling you how they learn how to paint more and things of that nature. Gradual but widespread educational reform. So it was gradually spread, but it came all over the place as time took place. In politics, the Renaissance contributed to the development of the customs and conventions of diplomacy, and its science and science to an increased reliance, observation, and inductive reasoning. Although the Renaissance saw revolutions in many intellectual pursuits as well as social and political upheaval, it is perhaps best known for its artistic developments and the contribution of such polymaths as Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo, who inspired the term Renaissance man. So these are telling you about their famous painters and stuff. That's what they're really known for. But they have you to believe that they were so philosophers and inventor of thought. The Renaissance began in the 14th century in Florence, Italy. Various theories have been proposed to account for its origins and characteristics, focusing on a variety of factors, including the social and civic peculiarities of Florence at the time, its political structure, the patriarch and dominant family, the Mediac, this is a family, Medici, I'm sorry, and the migration of Greek scholars and the texts of Italy following the fall of Constantinople. So what this is lying about, it says Greek scholars that came out of the text following the fall of Constantinople. So Constantinople was the place where the very first church was and the very first university for the Europeans. That's 532. It was finished in 537 by Justinian and his wife Theodora. So Constantinople was a city named after Constantine the Roman. And this did not take place in Rome or Italy. This was in Turkey. Today is Istanbul, and that same place, the Hagia Sophia, is a museum today. It was taken over by the Ottoman Turks in 1453. So after that, they made it a mosque, and today it's a museum. So Constantinople held the Hagia Sophia, who was built by nothing but Africans. And they taught the Europeans ABCs and things of that nature because they never had an alphabet system. So that all happened in Constantinople. So they saying that this was the Greeks. But see, the Greeks was over there because they took rulership from the pharaohs in Egypt, and they had this stuff built, but they still had to learn from the Africans. And one of them is Mayer Chrysoloras, the golden teacher, and he was over there teaching the Greeks. So when this fell, they finally got a chance to move this in 1453, around 1439 and 1445 when they built the Vatican. They started building St. Peter's Basilica, the Vatican. It's all together, but they came and had that happen all the way in the 15th century. That's what it's talking about. But it's trying to lead you to believe that the Greek scholars, no Greek scholars, once it fell by the Ottoman Turks, it come into Italy. So other major centers were the Italian city-states, such as Venice. This is all the names, Bologna and all that. And finally, Rome during the Renaissance papacy. So all these places so-called had literacy, which is a lie. Then it said it finally came to Rome during the Renaissance papacy with this, the fall of Constantinople. This not telling you. If you look up Constantinople, the only place that was there and they was trying to attack the Ottoman Turks was the Hagia Sophia. And they took that over. That had scrolls in it. That was a place of learning. It was the first Christian church as well as the place of learning. I'm going to show you and tell you about that stuff in another lecture. But this is lies to show you that try to show you that the Greeks had some type of literacy, which they didn't. They were savages. They come in strong-arm stuff, and that's what they did. The Renaissance has a long, complex historiography, and in line with the general skepticism of discrete periodizations, there has been much debate among historians reacting to the 19th century glorification of the Renaissance. They embarrassed that that's all this is saying. And individual culture heroes and Renaissance men questioning the usefulness, of the Renaissance in the term and historical delineation. The art historian Ewing observed the Renaissance to the concept of the Renaissance. It said he observed of this resistance. So he's saying, I guess this guy is saying he understand why it's a resistance about the Renaissance era, because I guess this ignores that they had all that stuff that they lied about. The Renaissance will show you that that stuff didn't go on. So a lot of these people, they took him back. They took offense to it. Like, hey, don't tell this type of story, which this is a fact, because we already had big buildings. We already had schools, and because they lie, but that's not true. If that was true, why is this going on? Why are they just learning how to paint, make concrete and all that old stuff? It is perhaps no accident that the faculty of the Italian Renaissance, the factuality of the Italian Renaissance has been most vigorously questioned by those who are not obliged to take a professional interest in the aesthetic or atheistic, what is this? Aesthetic aspects of civilization. Historians of economic and social developments, political, religious situations, and most particularly natural science, but not explanationally by students or literature and art, even by historians of art. What is it saying? Oh, they don't have a professional interest in this stuff, the Renaissance, because they want to stick to the story that all this stuff had already preceded this time period. Some observers have called into question whether the Renaissance was a cultural advance from the Middle Ages, instead seeing its period of pessimism and nostalgia for classical antiquity. Antiquity just means ancient times. While social and economic historians, especially this is Greek, have instead focused on the community between the two eras, which are linked. So by thousands of ties. Okay, now we're gonna go into the Bible and the understanding. People, when they see this, they think it's a historical old book with nothing but God's word in it. So this is just a picture of the King James version. This is the complete Old and New Testament. What I'm going to be dealing with today is the New Testament. But this all is together, and I'm going to continue this series with another one on the Old Bible and how they first came under one cover. So that happened in like 1523, if I'm not mistaken. And then later again in 1535. So the God of the Old Testament versus the God of the New Testament. Look at this mockery. There's no God in either one, but they put it together like it's, you see this? If it's two different gods, why are they? But anyway, you can deal with that, how you deal with it. I see it as a mockery. The God of the Old Testament versus the God of the New Testament. If it's one God, this lets you understand that they're playing around with you. If it's one God, so-called one God of everything, why are they categorizing it as this? This is sad. Now, everybody that hears this stuff think that the 12 disciples and all these type of names wrote these books. Luke, Timothy, John, Acts, all these, and they lead you to believe that these are historical ancient people. Again, they're not. These are incarnated names. I'm going to do a whole lecture on that coming pretty soon. Stay with me and bear with me. And I'm going to prove that to you. If you sit here and listen with some type of basis of understanding what you're hearing, I'm going to be able to show you that. Now, these are all the 12 disciples. When you hear the books of the Bible and all that, you think of these historical old ancient people in your mind. These people never existed. Simon, Peter, James, none of them. John, and look at Jesus. He high. He's sitting here high, but he ain't doing nothing but posing for a picture. But this is pictorial of what they supposed to have looked like. And none of them is black. You see? So the Hebrew, he come along and paint him black. He paint this man face all black. He paint him all black. Andrew was black. King James was black. How can King James be black? A British man, a person that was a king over there in Britain and all that other stuff. Come on, man, stop it. They're fools. They want to, instead of trashing the story, they want to hold on to it and blacken it down. Oh, that was black. Sarah was black. Jesus was black. They don't have anything of their own. They just go around claiming other civilizations. And I'm going to deal with them later. Another lecture. So Mark's gospel. It is the shortest gospel of all the gospels. Have for the focus on the events of the last week of Jesus' life. Everything he wrote about was in the last week of his life. This is Mark. Mark wrote his account of Jesus' life in Rome around 60 to 65 AD. See, this is AD, ABCE, after BCE days ran out, but they say AD, after the death of their Lord, or Anno Domini. This is a lie. You don't have nothing going on in the first century. Wasn't no church, wasn't no Jesus, was nothing in the first century. Paul and Peter were in Rome at this time, and Nero was the Roman emperor. Okay, Nero began a persecution of Christian in Rome. There was no Christian, there was nobody in Rome, no church in Rome. I just showed you in Constantinople, the church fell to the Ottoman Turks in 1453. After that, they had a church in Rome. I said the church in the St. Peter's Basilica, which is the Vatican, began being built in 1439. And well, they dug everything up in 1439. 6 years later, they started building in 1445. And it took them 181 years after that. And you had the Vatican City open up in 1626. You can look all that stuff up that I'm saying. I don't come around just putting things together that I don't know about. So both Paul and Peter lost their lives along with hundreds of others. Lies. Okay, now this man, this is Luke. What we know about Luke. Luke was a doctor. another lie. None of these people could read or write. As well, he was educated and wrote and published uh, Greek with a wide vocabulary. Lies. Never even found him. If he published books and stuff in Greek and he was around, we would have all this publishing. He alone of the writers of the gospel was not a Jew. He was a Greek. The only gospel writer who did not meet Jesus personally. He didn't even meet Jesus. He became a believer and a companion of Paul, perhaps as long as 20 years after Jesus had died and been raised. So this is more lies. In the history of mankind and the world, you never heard nobody being raised and reincarnated. But in this book, you have a sighting of people that walk up out the grave. Once Jesus died, not only do he resurrect, something that never happened, you have many of people jumping up out of the grave, walking in the city and showing themselves to people that never existed so they can't tell us the story. Say, hey, I seen them people when Jesus died. Nobody never wrote that, just between the pages of the Bible. Now, this is the progenitor of the Bible. He wrote all this stuff. It looked like Washington, D.C. George Washington. This is Desiderius Erasmus. He one of the world's famous homosexuals. Him, King James, the black man they want to call the black man, and the Hebrews do. Nobody else understand him as being a black man because we have pictorial form. They painted him. Why would the painter look at you and paint you black and you go ahead and say, oh, good painting? You go to Disneyland and they paint you and you say, hey, I don't look nothing like that. This depiction don't look like me. You're not going to pay him, let alone talking about good job. So this is Desiderius Erasmus. He was a homosexual and he was a Greek philosopher, and he wrote the New Testament in 1516. So let's read a bit of information about Desiderius Erasmus. It should be recalled Desiderius Erasmus was the Renaissance humanist who first published the received text. The received text is the New Testament, but it's the Bible in 1516. It was called the Novum Instrumentum, which means the new instrument. This was prior to the beginning of the Reformation in 1517. It was prior to that when Martin Luther named after Martin Luther King named after Martin Luther. He the guy that put the 95 Theses on the door and all that in Wittenberg, Germany, regarding the origins of the Reformation. But Desiderius Erasmus was before him, so he would be his father in the Reformation Act, basically. It has been said by Catholics, enemies thereof, that Erasmus laid the eggs, Lutheran hatched the chickens. This is all that's going on in science. So let's run through this. He was born in Holland. This is Gouda Holland. Was the legitimate son of Roger Garrod, an educated priest, and Margaret. What is this? A washerwoman. Erasmus later tried to hide the origins by claiming, I've been born in Rotterdam, where his grandparents lived. He didn't want to claim his father. He never used his father's name. He calls himself Desiderius, meaning desired one in Latin. So he was desired, but he was a homosexual like men and women. So in 1478, it goes on. It said his mother took the children away to where Erasmus was educated by his brethren and things of that nature. When he was about 15 years old, Erasmus' parents died of the plague. This is Black Death. This is what they was dying of, the Europeans, when they went into the Dark Ages and things of that nature. And he later died from the same thing. So it go on and say he, I guess this is saying after where he died and stuff at. So let's go on. His work. Let's see. Do I have to read all this? I don't think I want to read all this. I got a lot of stuff to read on it. It's the bibliography of him and things of that nature. Let's see. Okay. This is saying the letters and stuff he wrote to people. That's what I was looking at. I apologize. I was just reading briefly through it. I wanted to read all that, but I know I'm trying to do the pictorial slides in a couple of minutes or less, or things of that nature. So I got a lot of stuff to read. So you can run through this if you want to, but I'm gonna show you a lot of the stuff that you need to know. So this is the Novum Instrumental. This is where the New Testament derived from. And if you see here, this is the contents of it. These are the manuscripts dating back. He went and found the furthest ones he can find. These are all Pauline epistles and all that old stuff. Okay, 12th century. See the date? This is the stuff he had to dig through and say, give me the oldest ones before I put this Bible out. 12th century. 12th century. That means the 1100s. 15th century. This is the 16th. It's the 1600s. 1300, 16. So you see, this stuff is not that ancient, okay? As noted above, in 1516, Erasmus published from Basel, Switzerland, and his Greek New Testament, which he called the Novum Instrument. The Novum Instrumentum. It means that, though. It means the new instrument. Contrary to popular misconception, Erasmus had more than a handful of manuscripts at his disposal. It's saying, people say, oh, he wrote that, he didn't have that many manuscripts. This said he had plenty of them. Erasmus had more than a handful of scripts at his disposal. That was preserved, I guess, from Smith, the noted expert in the life of Erasmus, comments for the first edition. Erasmus had before him the manuscripts, 4 of which he found in England and 5 at Basel. The last codex was lent to him by John Rushland. This is another guy. I guess he was a Bible scholar, things of that nature, and appeared to Erasmus so old that it might have come from the apocalyptic age. It was so old to him, he said, oh, this is one of the oldest ones he ever had. So he used that as well. That was at his disposal. He was aware of the Vaticanist, the Vatican Library, and had a friend by the name of Bombasius research that for him. However, he rejected the characters variants of the Vaticanist, which distinguishes itself from the received text. The variants are what would become the distinguishing characters of the critical text among 350 years later. This is the publications of how he did it and things of that nature. Is saying the first one came out, the Novum Instrumentum, in 1516. They later changed it to the Novum Testamentum in 1519. That's what this is saying. And in 1535, it became the New Testament. If we go down here, that's what this stuff is saying. So there was a 5th edition. It tells you how it took that shape. First, it was the Novum Instrumentum. The first one, it was in Greek. The first person who translated it was a friend of his, Wayman Tisdale. You might know him. He did a lot of the little things towards the King James time. So see Tisdale right here, and he was his friend. He was a good friend of his. So Tisdale used his book to translate into English for the first time ever, and that was in 1523. So the New Testament of H.M. Brink. This goes on and tell you the second part of the Christian biblical canon. The first part being the Old Testament, that only came out in 1475. So I don't want you to think that's old either. On the Hebrew Bible, you can look it up. The New Testament discusses the teachings and person of Jesus, as well as events in the first century in Christianity. Christians regard both the Old Testament together as sacred scripture. The New Testament in whole or in part has frequently accompanied the spread of Christianity around the world. It reflects and serves as a source of Christianity, theology, and morality, Extended readings and phrases directly from the New Testament are incorporated along with the readings from the Old Testament into the various Christian um, liturgies. The New Testament has influenced religious, philosophical, and political movements in Christendom. Christendom is Christianity, but it's a political instrument that Christians use. And then they go on and say art and music. So now, and then they tell you now the Dead Sea Scrolls is something I wanted you to see as well. That's why I got this up here. People believe that these, when they found these, they said, oh, now we're going to link that bridge. We're going to connect that link from the missing Jesus and all the old stuff. Now we found it. So they believe they found it and they landed on the Rock of Gibraltar, found the gold and all the rest of that old stuff. But this later becomes what is noted as is a fake, you know. So I'm gonna read this. The Dead Sea Scrolls, also the Qumran Cave Scroll. The Qumran Cave Scrolls is where they found them at. So they can name them either one, but they're the Dead Sea Scrolls. Ancient Jewish religious manuscripts found in the Qumran caves in Judean desert near En Fikshak, or I guess this is who found it, the northern shore in the Dead Sea. Scholarly consensus date that the scrolls from last 3rd century BCE and the 1st century of the Common Era. So the texts have great historical, religious, and linguistic significance because they include the second oldest known surviving manuscripts of works included the Hebrew Bible canon, along with the Deuteronomical canonical. That's the book of Deuteronomy, but it's canonical work, I guess. Extra biblical manuscripts were preserved, evidence of the diversity of religious thought. Late Second Temple of Judaism. Never been no first temple. I'm gonna have a second one. Almost all of the Dead Sea Scrolls is a collection currently under the ownership of the government of the State of Israel, of course, and housed in the Shrine of the Book on the grounds of Israel Museum. So they found these things in 1946 to 47 right here. And what is not a coincidence about that is that's when, this is a picture of the Dead Sea Scrolls. They're 20th century fake. That's the 1940s where they found them at. That's the 20th century. So they're nothing but fakes. And I'm gonna show you a bit of that quick because I wanted to deal with this, but I just wanted to show you this for something I got coming up. Because today my basis was the New Testament to show you that only came out in 1516, and who derived it? Desiderius Erasmus. He put 9 manuscripts in there. The Synoptic Gospels, but John didn't come until Lancelot Andrewes and his theologians created the King James Bible in 1611. So he had Matthew, Mark, Luke. He had 1 and 2 Peter. He had 1 and 2 Peter. He had Galatians and epistles to the Romans. He had 9 manuscripts in there. So, and this right here tells you that the Dead Sea Scrolls is a scam. Dozens of recently sold fragments are fakes, experts warn. Since 2002, collectors have paid millions of dollars. And it goes on here and say in the museum in Washington, D.C., they have fakes that they show, pieces, evidence, emerges of fraud, things of that nature. And so this is what I wanted to show you. This is a petition in 1947. The British mandate came and they gave them this mandate for Jerusalem. So I told you they found it 46, 47. It's no coincidence that they find all this stuff in the land of the so-called Bible, the holiest land in the world. So in 1922, they made Transjordan and all that stuff, Kuwait. So you think this stuff is old, but this is very new. This stuff been named in the early 19th century. So, and right here, 1947, like I told you, this is Transjordan, Jerusalem, Israel. This is all along with that petition and mandate for them to change it to these names. So they find these Dead Sea Scrolls and they try to substantiate them by, oh, we found them in Israel and Jerusalem, but all that's under a mandate, and they made that stuff up. So that's it on that one. I thank you for tuning in with me. I'm gonna come up out of here. Let me start broadcasting. Let me see where we at. Yeah, that's it. So that's my take, and I showed you that the New Testament was not as old and mind-boggling as you might think. This stuff is very modern. I'm going to show you about the Old Testament next, and then I'm going to jump into Dead Sea Scrolls. So have a good day. Thank you for tuning in. I'm out.